Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Crest Network. This webinar this morning, our regular Tuesday morning webinar, is entitled Selling by Storytelling. Just to give you a heads up, this is a little bit longer than our normal webinars. This will go very close to 55 minutes. So hopefully you'll be able to watch it in its entirety, and if not, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the link so you can watch it completely at your own time. This is entitled Selling by Storytelling, and my motivation for presenting this, and it has always been, to help you increase your sales. As a salesperson, the most important thing you can do is to increase your sales, and engaging your customers by sharing stories is a powerful way to do that. The secret to successful communication, to successful persuasion and engagement, is good storytelling. We have all observed and watched or been involved with teachers telling stories to their kids. They're fascinated. Last night I was reading a brand new book to our 5-year-old grandchild, and it was a fairly lengthy book, and he sat there fixated on it and on the pictures and listening intently. And for those of you that might know my grandson, you can't nail him down or strap him down even with duct tape for more than about 1 minute. And he sat there for a good 10 to 12 minutes listening intently. He was fascinated by the story. Let's talk about the 6 characteristics of successful brands. And ultimately, throughout this presentation, we're going to be talking about your brand. But for starters, let's think about Starbucks and Nike and McDonald's and Apple, just to take 4 that everybody is familiar with. The audience knowledge about Starbucks or Nike or Apple is incredible. Those brands have gone out of their way to make sure that the audience was knowledgeable about the brand. They have developed a uniqueness to their brand, which created a following. There is always consistency. They are extremely competitive. They have great exposure, and whether you like their politics or not, they do have intense leadership. But let's think about audience knowledge just for a second. For those that know me, you know I'm a Starbucks guy, and there is audience knowledge, me, about Starbucks. I order the triple shot grande cinnamon dolce latte, non-fat, no whip, extra cinnamon, extra hot. Yeah, I do. Why? In part because I have the knowledge of what's available. They have indoctrinated that into many of us. There's also consistency. Go to any McDonald's you want, anywhere in the country. The Egg McMuffin is always the same. Always. They are consistent across every area. They are competitive. They're driving that. But you know what? They're driving the competitiveness of the brand based on emotion, not on a bunch of technical details about their product. Successful brands don't give you a litany of basic information. They're not providing you with a series of bullet points about their product. Can you imagine Disney or Apple putting an ad out that listed 10 or 12 or 30 key technical points about their product? They don't do it. They don't provide just basic bullet pointed information. They even don't provide features of their product or their service. It's not about those things. Successful brands are about emotion. Emotion is what sells. Remember 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, before Google, the salesperson had to be extremely knowledgeable about his or her product or service so that he could provide those details to the client. That's all changed. Now your client can find out just about anything they want to know about the details of your product or service. So now it's up to you as a salesperson to sell the emotional aspects of your product or your service. Folks, we buy what we buy out of pretty much 5 key points. We buy out of love, we buy out of pride, and not necessarily a good pride. We buy out of guilt. We buy out of fear. Fear of what? Fear that someone else is going to get it first. Or we buy out of greed. Really? We buy out of love, pride, guilt, fear, or greed. And you know what? Those are based on emotion. But those are the motivators as to why we buy. We don't buy as a rule because we need it. We buy because we want it. When you're telling a story, especially a story about a particular brand, and especially your brand, first and foremost, and I'm going to say this more than once, it's absolutely not about you. It's about what helps your customers succeed. It's about the values that make up your very existence. It's about, and make sure you put this into your memory, it's about how your product or your service makes them feel. Folks, the brand, your company name, is not the hero. Your brand has to answer 4 key questions. And some of these questions, they're really tough to come up with the answer. What do you promise that nobody else in your market promises? You see, if you're calling on plumbers and you're offering $500, probably your competitor is offering $500 also, or $600, or here in South Florida, $1,000 per lead. What do you deliver that no other competitor can deliver? That's a really, really hard one to think about. But that's what it takes for your brand to sell on an emotional basis. What do you believe that only you believe? Eliminate your competitors. What is it that you believe that only you believe? And this is probably one of the most difficult challenges of all. In a world of 7 billion people, In a world of abundance, what do you offer that is scarce? There are 7 billion plus people in the world. There are millions and upon millions of businesses, many of them similar or almost identical. There are hundreds of millions of websites in the world or on the internet. So does your website look like everybody else's website? It better not. If you want to blow it out of the water, if you want to rock your operation, it better be offering things that are scarce. And, you know, I hear this so much. I've had companies, owners, or marketers hand me one of their line cards or their brochures, and it lists 25, 30, 35, 40 different services in a list of bullet points that they offer. And they're always devastated. They're always hurt when I tell them that it's far better to specialize in a few specific things and limit what you claim to be an expert in. You're not the Swiss Army knife. You aren't, and you cannot be the jack of all trades, because as the saying goes, the jack of all trades means that you're a master of none. You're not credible and you're not believable when you're trying to be an expert to everybody. Folks, you need brain surgery really bad. So I'm sure that you don't go searching for a doctor that can do it all. He can fix a hangnail. He's an expert at sinuses. He knows how to replace your hip. And oh, good news, he's also done some heart transplants. So what the heck? Let's use him. He's cheaper than everybody else. Not one of us would ever hire the cheapest doctor to do our heart surgery or our brain surgery or just about any other surgery. We want an expert. Folks, your customers want experts. There are two kinds of storytelling. One is the very short storytelling, which is often simply one sentence or so. And then there is the storytelling that's much, much longer. It has 1 or 2 paragraphs. It has 6, 8, 10, 12 sentences to it. Get really good at telling longer stories when you can, because it enables you to put multiple different ideas or features and benefits and products and services together in a combined story. And when you can do that effectively, people will remember that. It also makes it easier for your client to remember all the different details, because story form is easily remembered. A series of bullet points is not. The other thing storytelling does, and this is extremely important, it helps captivate and build the anticipation of your client and by your client, so that it creates a deeper want, a deeper desire. Remember what I said, people don't buy because they need it. People buy because they want it or they desire it. And your powerful story will achieve that. People can't resist good stories. Everybody loves a good story. You, me, children, old folks, everybody likes a good story. So in your sales efforts, create a few good stories that you can share with people to build a bond, to build a relationship, to build the emotion. Your story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. What stories do is they bring together a whole bunch of different information about your service or your business. Most all that we do isn't rational and it isn't logical. Let me repeat that. Most everything that we do is not based on rational and logical impulses or reactions. It's based on emotion. Good stories do what we need them to do, and that is to hook or reel in the other person's subconscious. And a good story then gives your service legitimate, genuine meaning. But I want to caution you. One false line, one portion of your story that you added in and or invented or is bogus or untrue, the minute you tell that bogus story or bogus part of a story, it destroys the entire story. Make sure that there isn't anything false in the story, because you're going to lose your client permanently. You're not going to be trusted. And in previous webinars and videos that I've done, you've heard me say that people want to trust their salesperson, and if their salesperson doesn't convey trust, all is lost. You won't make a sale. I've often, and I play this game with my grandson, he loves to come in after school and he does a thumbs down. What happened? And he says, well, I was bad in school today. And he comes up with a great story. I punched my best friend and I kicked my teacher. And I'll just say, you know, that's so sad. I'm going to go ahead and call up your teacher and find out if that's true. And then he gets the big grin on his face and he starts laughing. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding. I was good today. Folks, you can spot false parts of a story. Don't be caught up in the mistake of telling a great story and then throw in something you think is necessary but happens to be false. It kills your credibility. It kills the story's credibility. The fact of the matter is, features like what I've listed here on the screen, listed 7 or 8 or 9 of them, features are generally true. But sadly, features don't sell. The very first one, we offer 24/7, 365 response to your emergency. Okay, that's true. You do. You'll go out in the middle of the night. You'll go out on a weekend. You'll go out on a holiday. They know you're available during business hours, but you think that you need to tell them we're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and oh yeah, 366 days a year on leap year. No, you don't. It would be far better, and this is in the case of telling a story, a simple one-sentence story. Folks, we're here for you. Weekends, holidays, and in the middle of the night. That's far more powerful than 24/7, 365. And if you think that you can brag about owning the Binford 5000 Super Sucker, the fact of the matter is, you ought to be saying, because believe me, nobody really cares that you own the Binford 5000 Super Sucker. You ought to be saying, we have professional equipment to reduce your costs and your downtime, get you back in operation much quicker. That is a story. That's telling something that appeals to their emotion. We do fire, water, smoke, and mold. Oh my gosh, if I could have $1 for every time a restoration contractor, owner, salesperson, employee told me they do fire, water, smoke, and mold, I would be very, very wealthy. And I often say, you do fire? What exactly do you do with fire? Do you use a magnifying glass with the sun and try to catch some twigs on fire? What is it you do with water? You drink it? We've gotten in the habit in our own industry of using those lame terminologies when they're only meaningful to fellow restoration people. If you just simply said, we help you get back to business quickly from your disaster. And last but not least, everybody needs to be IICRC certified. Every salesperson even needs to be IICRC certified with some certification, but it's meaningful outside of our industry. And in fact, it's pretty much meaningful for insurance agents or adjusters who really should care. But when you say, and this is your little short story, we have skilled and trained professionals on our staff to do it right the first time, getting rid of all your worries. That's powerful. That sells by telling a story. In crafting the story, also, wherever you can, craft or develop personal signature stories for the owners and managers of the company. Give one compelling reason why the owner decided to start his business. He probably didn't decide to start his business because he needed money. There was probably a deeper reason. Find out that information and craft or create a story that's a personal signature story that can be told over and over and over again out in the marketplace. Brand narratives that represent the very essence of your brand to the community are extremely meaningful. Develop and create stories that are emotional. They're moving. They better be credible, but they also better be compelling. So I'm going to tell you two really quick stories. Story number one is this little girl on the left. Sweetest, darling little girl. Her name is Zeta. My daughter, as a foster parent, had her in her home when she was born, or shortly after she was born. Little Zeta was in her home for a year, and great news, her mom is rehabilitated from drugs and alcohol. She gets out of the facility where she is. She qualifies with the state of Florida to have her little baby Zeta back in with her. And then mom gets pregnant, and I don't have a picture here, but little Zeta suddenly has another little sister named Zyla. True story. And now Zyla and Zeta are with their mom, no longer with my daughter, the foster mom. And then on 2 Thanksgivings ago, mom apparently wasn't cured from drugs. And on Thanksgiving 2 years ago, she overdoses on drugs and dies. Guess what? Little baby Zeta and Zyla are back in my daughter's home as foster kids. That's a moving and compelling story that's also very true. Sharing a story like that tells you a little bit about you or the person telling the story. The other quick story, little guy on the right. My daughter got him at the hospital a few days after he got out of NICU as a drug little boy born with drug addictions because the mom was drug addicted. This little boy came into my daughter's home, and after about 2.5 years, and the state terminated the parental rights because they were in and out of prison, this little guy was adopted into our home. He's now my legal grandson, and we go by the name of Nehemiah, except he doesn't like Nehemiah and he can't say Nehemiah very well, or couldn't. So we call him Nemo, like the little fish. Nemo is now 5+ years old and the love of my heart. The guy he's the coolest dude you could ever want to have as a grandson. These kinds of stories are true, they're moving, and they're compelling. Folks, develop stories like that because you will create an incredible emotional bond with your clients. Whatever you're selling has to be more than a simple list of bullet points. Nobody cares about a simple list of bullet points. Nobody cares about or wants a basic transaction. They want an experience. They want emotion. They want you to fulfill their needs, their desires, their wants. Often they don't know what their needs are, so you're really appealing to their wants or their desires. They want you to take away their pains. And let's be absolutely clear here, folks. Sales over the past 15 years, this is going back to around 2005, 2006, 2007, somewhere in that range. Sales over that time have moved dramatically away from being product-centric, which is listing a series of facts about the product, and they've moved to what's referred to as customer-centric, where the customer can find out anything they want to know about the facts. What they want is you to sell them on the emotion of whatever it is you have to offer. It's about memories versus stories. We can remember an incredible amount of detail about a compelling story. We're going to forget lists. We're going to forget statistics. We're going to forget phone numbers. Hey, how many of us don't even know the phone number of our own wife or husband, their cell phone number? Why? Because they're on our speed dial on our phone. We can speak the person's name and the phone number comes up. We don't have to remember numbers anymore. And so we don't. Guys, we all have to admit we don't read instructions. So that's an easy one. We don't have to remember instructions because guys don't read instructions. But the fact of the matter is, instructions are 1, 2, 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. We can't remember all of that. How many times have we started assembling something with lots of parts and we don't want to read the instructions, step 1, step 2, step 3, but we do look at the pictures and we often can assemble it based on the pictures. The pictures are the equivalent of a story. Emotional, yes. Rational and logical and conscious thought is rarely a key part of the buying decision. We're going to talk about Heinz for just a second here. Heinz was, and you can see how you can read on the bullet points here, founded in Pennsylvania. They enjoy number 1 or number 2 market share. Their top 15 brands account for 95% of their sales. They sell, this is an incredible statistic, 650 million bottles of ketchup a year. A week from now, if someone says to you, hey, how many bottles of ketchup does Heinz sell a year? You'll probably remember 600,000, because we don't remember those kind of statistics. Oh, good news, they're a responsible corporate citizen. None of that makes your mouth water, makes you want to go buy ketchup. But this does. Hot, steaming French fries with ketchup slowly dripping out the end of the bottle. It's really mouth-watering. I love fries and ketchup. Or a sizzling hamburger or hot dog. That makes you want to buy Heinz ketchup far more than a list of bullet points of basic facts about Heinz. Sell to the emotion. The old saying way, way long time ago, sell the sizzle. In this case, make the story so visual and so graphic and so emotional that they can almost taste it and feel it and smell it. Our subconscious is incredibly strong. Our subconscious allows us to drive down the highway fast, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. We typically stay in our own lane. We can pass cars. We can change lanes. We can brake and slow down or stop when we need to. And we usually arrive at our destination uneventful. And we do all of that at the same time we're talking on our cell phone. We can do this because our subconscious is incredibly powerful. And if we see somebody coming down the highway that we know or along the side, we can wave to them while we're driving and we're talking on the phone. Folks, we have an we have an incredible mind that has the ability to factor in all of these different things and embrace an emotional story. So you can't just have a useful product. What you do with air movers and dehumidifiers, for heaven's sakes, it's certainly useful, but it's got to be far more than that. You've got to build a story or a legend or several stories into that basic product or service. And it better embody the values way beyond the basic function or the basic utility of your air mover or your dehumidifier. It needs to capture the emotion, because that's where the decisions are almost always made. What would the world lose if your brand did not exist? Differentiation is very, very hard to achieve, let alone maintain it, to sustain it over the long haul. And so in order for you to have your brand exist long-term and successful, you have to move from what's referred to as functional differentiation to emotional differentiation. Your job is to sell your customers merchandise or your customer's service. It's not to sell your own. If you do a really, really good job helping your customer sell their own products and their own service, they're going to be loyal to you, remain loyal to you for the long haul. And that's where emotional differentiation comes in. It doesn't come from cramming your product or your service down their throats. I step on a lot of toes when I hit this slide. Your company literature. I wrote an article 2 or 3 years ago about company literature, and the title of it, if I recall, is Company Literature. It's Junk. Yeah, let that sink in. Your company literature is all junk. I have never ever seen a piece of company literature that spoke to the emotion of the client. Folks, your literature, if you're going to have some, has to be different than your competitors. It has to have a story or a legend built into it. Again, it must embody, I've said this in a previous slide, it has to embody the values beyond basic utility. It must capture the emotion of the client. Most of us have a 4-color, glossy, gorgeous brochure created with great pictures and color, and we select fancy fonts, and we're proud of that brochure. Yeah, we're really proud of it because it appeals to our ego. If you can switch your name with your competitor's name on that brochure, it's junk. It has to appeal to the client's emotion. Remember, if you have a brand that has a price advantage, it's only for a short period of time because it's going to be undercut. Or if you have a website that brags that same thing. If your performance advantage can be outflanked by new technological development, you can't prevent your competitor from getting that new technology. A brand with functional differentiation can easily be overcome. But when you have emotional difference, very likely it will command your client's business at the price you want to charge forever. When you have a brand with key emotional elements woven into it, you have a brand with a live beating heart, and that's what people are looking for. And don't hit us on the head. We want to be entertained and we want to be educated. Make sure that your story is powerful by teaching and entertaining. It's referred to in the world today as edutainment. Everything that you say, everything that you offer on your website, everything that you have in a brochure should be edutainment, emotional stories. Does your story entertain? Does it teach? Does it engage your prospect? And does it stir emotions? It needs to reach the 5 senses. Does it seem genuine? My grandson can spot when I'm feeding him a line of crap. He knows it. He gets the big grin on his face and he says, People can sense truth. Does your story offer specifics? Can it be shorter? Can it be tighter? Can it be better? And does it engage as many of those 5 senses as possible? Just a suggestion to you folks, for the lack of a better term, I'm going to call them case histories. Case histories, examples, real live stories that happened in your business that were great for your client or your prospect or your customer. Those case histories are probably the single most powerful kind of story that you can tell. And you can tell it, even though it's quote unquote a sales pitch, they'll listen, they'll embrace it, they'll hear it, and they'll remember it. Stories are how we connect. Combining words, pictures, textures, memories, and emotions. And they all combine to make a great vehicle for building relationships and connections and getting customers to do business with us. It enhances the emotional and human connection with your customer. If you want impact, your brand, which essentially is your product or your service, better be compelling. It better be engaging. It better resonate with the audience. And by resonate, insert the word emotional. It better be emotional to your audience. It needs to have real impact, or whatever you're saying is just wah, 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 wah. Folks, it's a new game, and there are new rules to this new game. You would never play baseball pitching with pitching with a football. You would never go golfing with a soccer ball. It wouldn't make sense. But yet salespeople today are out there still playing the old game with the old rules, and they haven't realized that not only has the game changed, but the rules have changed. And people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. People buy because they like Dick Wagner, or they like Bill Giannone, or they like Scott Tarpley. They don't buy because of the company name. Let's recap. Wrap this webinar up. Storytelling is first and foremost successful communication. And secondly, it's about persuasion and engagement. But I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that it's about truth, and then you sharing that truth. And the better you are at using your words to help them visualize what you're selling them or telling them, the more powerful the story is. Reminders, stories are better than lists. Stories that are emotional kill it, they rock it, they blow it out of the water. It's a new rule book, folks. And I said this early at the beginning of this webinar, it's not about you. Salespeople have egos usually, and those egos get them into trouble because they think it's about them. It's absolutely not about them in any fashion. Folks, I'm Dick Wagner. You've been watching the webinar on selling by storytelling. I'm with the Crest Network. I'm one of the co-founders. We'd love to talk with you about ramping up your business. Thanks. Bye-bye.